Welcome back to the NASCAR Rise and Fall series on DannyBTalks. If this is your first time watching, then I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my channel where you'll find a variety of content, but especially these videos where I produce these sort of mini documentaries regarding the sport of NASCAR. Today's video is a good one on one of the powerhouse NASCAR teams in the 1970s and 1980s, but perhaps did they stick to it for too long? Let's take a look back at Junior Johnson Associates and their rise and fall. Now, Junior Johnson is of course one of the most infamous figures in the sport of NASCAR, known in a lot of ways for going to jail for producing and running moonshine, even while racing and winning races early on in his career. All in all, Johnson only spent 11 months in prison, so it wasn't a sentence that necessarily ended his racing career. Looking back on it today, well, I think producing then illegal moonshine, when you can literally go to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee and find that stuff everywhere legally, even finding moonshine at NASCAR races today, well, people today won't really look back on that offense as being a big deal. Now, it'd be different if you harmed people or the police to do it, but anyways, sort of like Popcorn Sutton, the history behind Johnson pre-NASCAR sort of made him an idol amongst NASCAR fans. Now overall, the legacy of Johnson's NASCAR team technically goes from 1953 to 1995, but don't let that fool you. The team most certainly didn't race for 42 years straight. The team first got their beginnings in 1953 when Junior Johnson piloted his own number 75 Oldsmobile in a 1953 running of the Southern 500. Johnson would qualify 26th and finish 38th in that race, and after that the idea of Junior Johnson owning a race team was just that. The team remained inactive for over a decade after that, returning in 1965. In 1965, Junior Johnson would pilot his own car 36 times, while Bobby Isaac and Curtis Turner would also take one or two turns driving for Johnson as well. Isaac and Turner each scored one top 5, and Junior Johnson put together a phenomenal run with 19 top 10s, in which 18 of those were top 5s, and of those, 13 of those top 5s were victories. He'd also score 9 pole awards that year as well. The next year in 1966, Johnson would race just 7 times in what would be his final races as a NASCAR driver, but it was certainly far from the end of his legacy in NASCAR. It was only just getting started. In his final run, Johnson would score 3 pole awards but would only record 1 top 5 in his last run. In addition, Darrell Derringer, AJ Foyt, Bobby Isaac, Gordon Johncock, Fred Lorenzen, and Curtis Turner would all take turns in driving Junior's car as well in 1966, with Bobby Isaac doing the best of 3 top 10s, with 2 of those being top 5s. For 1967, while 3 drivers would drive for Junior Johnson and Associates that season, none of them would be seen near as much as Darrell Derringer that season, who raced 16 times for the team, scoring the team 6 pole awards, 9 top 10s, 8 of which were top 5s, and 1 victory coming at North Wilkesboro Speedway, and this would truly be Junior Johnson's first victory solely as a car owner, not being the driver to put his own car in victory lane, and it certainly would not be the last. Now, somebody who did make 3 starts in 1967 for Johnson would end up being the primary guy for the team for the foreseeable future, and that's LeeRoy Yarbrough. LeeRoy was no relation to Cale Yarborough actually, but LeeRoy has a very dark story in NASCAR and racing, but I'm going to save that story for another time in a few weeks. For now, let's take a look at the run LeeRoy would give Johnson from 1968 to 1971. LeeRoy Yarbrough would compete in 20 races in 1968, picking up 6 pole awards and 13 top 5 finishes, and he'd also pick up 2 victories, one coming at Trenton and the other at Atlanta, but the next year in 1969 would bring on more success for the team. In the season opening Daytona 500, LeeRoy Yarbrough found himself in second place with 10 laps remaining, trailing Charlie Glotzback by 11 seconds. In most cases, you hear that and you think, oh man, put out the fire and call in the dogs, Charlie's got that one in the bag. Well, keep in mind, in that era, racing at Daytona was much different than it is today. Charlie's lead was not safe because Yarbrough actually managed to close the gap, and on the final lap of the Daytona 500, Yarbrough went down low to make the pass on Glotzback, but a lap car was in the way. Yarbrough dove even lower in the low side of turn 3 to clear the lap car, nearly clipping the apron in the process. He then took the lead away from Charlie Glotzback and went on to take the checkered flag in a car length ahead of Charlie Glotzback to win the 1969 Daytona 500. On top of this big win, Yarbrough would win the Rebel 400 and World 600 that same season, becoming the first driver in NASCAR's history to achieve the Triple Crown. Those 3 iconic races would be just 3 of the 7 total victories that Yarbrough would accomplish driving for Junior Johnson in 1969. In 1970 though, after a manufacturer withdrawal, Junior Johnson scaled back operations, fielding one-race deals for Donnie Allison at North Wilkesboro, Fred Lorenzen at Darlington, and David Pearson at Martinsville. Later in the year though, LeeRoy Yarbrough would return for a good chunk of races, scoring the win at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Next year, Johnson would only field a car 4 times for LeeRoy Yarbrough, and then he would temporarily shut down his operations once more, but this time we would not wait over 10 years to see them again. Now, in that time when Johnson wasn't fielding a car, he didn't just totally disappear from NASCAR either. Junior Johnson was serving as the head mechanic with Richard Howard's team, best known for running the number 12 Coca-Cola car driven by Bobby Allison. However, in 1974, Canadian rookie driver Earl Ross left Alan Brooks' racing operation to race for Junior Johnson, where he would pick up a win at Martinsville that season and claim the Rookie of the Year honors that year as well. He wouldn't be alone in jumping ship to Johnson's team, as Cale Yarborough also would join the team. Again, Cale is in no relation to LeeRoy Yarbrough, who raced for the team for a number of seasons. Both Cale and Earl drove in 15 races for Junior Johnson in 1974, but Cale's stats easily outweighed those of Earl Ross. Cale Yarborough would score 10 top 5 finishes that season, and 4 of those were victories. On top of what he accomplished with his previous team, Cale Yarborough finished the 1974 season of Junior Johnson second in the point standings. While Earl Ross would go elsewhere after 1974, Cale Yarborough returned the following season, and the results would create quite possibly one of Junior Johnson's first most famous drivers. He certainly would not be the last though. While 1975 was an okay season for Yarborough, racing in almost the entire season with 3 wins and 13 top 5s, the next 3 seasons afterwards would just be on an entire other level. With a combined 13 pole awards, 74 top 10s, 70 of which were top 5s, and 28 victories, Cale Yarborough's run from 1976 to 1978 would not only be one of the best of his era, but it still remains as one of the most dominant runs period in NASCAR. Cale Yarborough would hold the record of 3 consecutive championships for a very long time, with it standing until 2008 when Jimmy Johnson would win 3 consecutive championships before taking the title of most consecutive when he won 5 in a row from 2006 to 2010. While Cale Yarborough would never win another championship title after 1978, the remainder of his time racing for Junior Johnson would help set up the future for this team for years to come. In 1979, Cale would finish 4th, and in 1980, Cale would finish 2nd in the point standings, and from then the next chapter of the team would begin with the hiring of Darrell Waltrip in 1981 following Yarborough's departure from the team. Now, if you're a Dale Earnhardt Sr. fan, then perhaps a lot of you would wish that Darrell Waltrip had never been hired by Junior Johnson, but that's another story to be had. In fact, there's a lot of irony to that whole story in 1981. 1981 was the season where Rod Osterlund suddenly closed up his shop and sold to J.D. Stacy. While Dale Earnhardt would go on to race briefly with Stacy, he was not happy racing for Stacy's organization, so efforts were made to get Dale Earnhardt out of his contract with Stacy and into the number 3 car of Richard Childress, who'd be stepping away from the driving role to be more dedicated as a car owner. You can thank a lot of that to Junior Johnson actually setting up that situation too. The irony though, after Dale Earnhardt Sr. had already been racing for Richard Childress late in the 1981 season would drive a number 41 Mountain Dew car for Junior Johnson. The irony here, of course, is how big of a rival that Mountain Dew's primary driver Darrell Waltrip would go on to become for Childress' driver Dale Earnhardt. Outside of that irony though, when Darrell Waltrip did join Junior Johnson's team, it was really a breath of fresh air to continue the momentum established by Cale Yarborough. Right from the get-go, DW had 12 wins in both 1981 and 1982 for a combined 24 wins in his first 2 seasons of Junior Johnson's team. This led to 2 consecutive championships in 1981 and 1982, and much like Cale Yarborough, he very nearly put up the results in the 11 car to win 3 in a row, but in 1983 both Darrell Waltrip and Bobby Allison had 6 wins, but Allison's average finish was 7.0, while Waltrip's average finish was 7.7, and Bobby Allison won a title just 47 points ahead of Darrell Waltrip. During 1983, Waltrip sported the Pepsi Challenger colors for the majority of that season, but in 1984, Pepsi left the organization, opening the door for the team to don one of the team's most iconic sponsors. Having featured Busch Beer for a few seasons with Cale Yarborough, Anheuser-Busch was no stranger to Junior Johnson's race team, and when they returned to the team in 1984, they sponsored not just Darrell Waltrip, but also a second car for the team. Budweiser was a brand that they were looking to push with the team, and DW drove the 11 while Neil Bonnett drove the 12. Bonnett would record 14 top 10s and 7 top 5s, finishing 8th in the standings in 1984, while Darrell Waltrip would score 20 top 10s, 13 top 5s, and 7 wins in 1984, finishing 5th. For Waltrip, he actually won the most races in 1984, but too many bad runs when he wasn't doing well caught up to him with an average finish of 11.2, and that's why he was 5th in the standings and not contending for the title. However, despite fewer wins for Waltrip, the team would do better overall with both of their cars in 1985. Bonnett would score 18 top 10s, 11 top 5s, and he even got 2 victories in North Carolina, one at Rockingham and the other at North Wilkesboro Speedway, and he would finish out the season 4th in the standings. As for Waltrip, he'd pick up 21 top 10s, 18 of which were top 5s, and he'd score 3 victories. With an average finish of 7.3, he was the class of the field that season, and he would win his 3rd and final championship as a driver. Just one season later, the signs of the team failing were starting to be on the wall. 1985 would be the last championship season for the team. In the 1986 Summer 500 at Pocono, Neil Bonnett would be one of a number of cars collected in a crash in which his Budweiser number 12 would hit a grass embankment, putting the car on its side. Bonnett, who was no stranger to injuries throughout his career, would sit out the next race at Talladega with Davey Allison taking the wheel to finish 7th instead. Bonnett would record 12 top 10s, 6 top 5s, and late in the season at Rockingham, Bonnett would score his one and only victory that season, going on to finish 13th in the point standings. As for Waltrip, he'd score 22 top 10s where all but one was a top 5, and he'd win 3 times in 1986, and it would lead to a runner-up finish in the standings. Bonnett would leave after 1986 to race for another team the next season, while Waltrip, recognizing the level his talents were at during that time, asked Junior Johnson for a raise, and subsequently, Waltrip's request was not only denied, but he was also fired, meaning that for 1987, neither of Johnson's previous 2 drivers would be racing for him. Waltrip would go on to Hendrick Motorsports in 1987, while Johnson would once again reduce to a one-car operation with Terry Labonte behind the wheel. Labonte's time would be brief, only racing for 3 seasons between 87 to 89, picking up just 4 wins for the organization during his time there, and while he had plans to run his own independent team, Labonte instead went to the Precision Products Racing team in 1990. But speaking of independent teams, things very nearly went different for one of NASCAR's biggest underdog stories. While Jeff Bodine was who drove for Johnson's Budweiser number 11, he was not Junior Johnson's first choice for 1990. Rather, Alan Kulwicki was. Johnson first asked Kulwicki to replace Terry Labonte in the number 11 in 1990, to which Kulwicki declined Johnson's offer, stating that he was more interested in running his own team. After 1990, Xerox ended their partnership with Kulwicki's racing team, and once again, Junior Johnson came calling to Alan Kulwicki. However, just like last time, Kulwicki declined Junior Johnson's $1 million offer because Kulwicki was certain he had just landed a sponsorship deal from the Maxwell Coffeehouse Company. Well, here's the thing about Junior Johnson. He was a great race car driver, he was a brilliant business owner, but he was also a ruthless, vengeful, and downright nasty man if you challenged him or told him no more than he wanted to hear. Remember, he fired Darrell Waltrip because he wanted a raise. Now, because Alan Kulwicki told him no not just once but twice, Junior Johnson went to Maxwell Coffee himself and stole that sponsorship away from Kulwicki's team. So in 1991, Kulwicki was left searching for sponsors to start the season, eventually ending up with Hooters, which would become an iconic look. But back to Junior Johnson. In 1991, Jeff Bodine, who won 3 times in 1990, leading to a 3rd place points finish, would win just 1 time in 1991 in the Budweiser 11, while Sterling Marlin would drive Johnson's new number 22 Maxwell Coffeehouse Ford. Marlin finished 1991 in 7th in the standings, while Bodine had regressed to 14th. But in 1992, Bodine left the team, and Johnson finally got an established racer he was looking for. Bill Elliott, who had just left Melling Racing, which had evolved from the race team his father started, was tasked with driving the number 11 Budweiser Ford, and as fate would have it, it'd be Elliott who would go head-to-head against Alan Kulwicki and Davey Allison in the end of the year. Elliott would win 5 times during 1992, including 4 in a row towards the start of the season after the Daytona 500, plus the last race of the season at Atlanta. But despite winning that last race there at his home track of Atlanta, Georgia, it was not enough, as Kulwicki edged out the man who tried to do his small team dirty the season prior by just 10 points. Many fans would argue that Johnson didn't deserve to win that season's championship after what he tried to do to Kulwicki. No ill will wish towards Bill Elliott, of course, but it was certainly seen as a dirty move to steal that sponsorship because he said no. But Kulwicki got the last laugh. Sadly though, we all know what happened next year in 1993, and likewise from 1993 on, it was as if a curse was with the team of Junior Johnson. Elliott returned to the team's number 11 but would go winless, finishing 8th in 1993, while Sterling Marlin would leave to go to Stavola Brothers Racing, and Maxwell Coffee House would depart the team as well. But McDonald's came on board and the number 22 was renumbered to the 27, with Hut Strickland taking the wheel for 1993, but his season would not live up to the standard Johnson hoped for, with just 2 top 10s and 1 top 5, finishing 24th in the standings. Despite the poor 1993 season, Bill Elliott returned once more in 1994, winning just 1 race that season, while Hut Strickland was replaced by Jimmy Spencer, who would win 2 times. As fate would have it, those were the final victories for the team, and for 1995, both Spencer and Elliott would not return, with Elliott forming his own team, taking away the McDonald's sponsorship with him on his way out the door. Johnson would hire the brother of Jeff Bodine, Brett Bodine, to drive the number 11 in 1995 with Lowe's as the primary sponsor, while Loy Allen would drive the number 27 in 4 races with sponsorship from Hooters that he carried over from TriStar Motorsports before being replaced by Elton Sawyer, who would compete in the Hooters ride for 20 races that season while competing for Rookie of the Year honors. Sadly, with as much history as the team had made, that Kulwicki curse appeared to be real. The team only scored 2 top 10s in 1995, both with Brett Bodine, and before the 1996 season, Johnson sold the number 11 team to Brett Bodine to run as his own Brett Bodine Racing, while the 27 team of Elton Sawyer was sold off to attorney David Blair to form David Blair Motorsports. As far as why the team eventually failed after staying dominant for so long, I think a lot of it has to do with not being able to keep up with the times, but it also has a lot to do with the relationships that were kept, or rather not kept, long term. The longest relationship that drivers had of the team was between 5 to 7 seasons, with both Cale Yarborough and Darrell Waltrip. We saw the ruthlessness that Johnson had as an owner displayed of both Waltrip and his approach of Alan Kulwicki. In the end, Junior Johnson & Associates' ultimate demise was Junior Johnson's way of doing business. If you look at guys like Rick Hendrick, Richard Childress, Joe Gibbs, and Roger Penske, and it's not hard to see why some drivers make their entire career racing for them. Junior Johnson, while a great businessman, you can't say the same for. So let me know what you thought. What did you see was the main reason for the team shutting down following 1995? What was your favorite moments in the team's run? Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. If you're new here, then I invite you to please leave a like on the video and hit subscribe and click the bell icon so that you get alerts for when I post more great NASCAR content like this here on my YouTube channel. I also want to thank my Danny B super fans for your continued monthly support as a YouTube channel member. Your donation helps support my time in creating videos like this. Until next time, this is Danny B. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye guys. Hey race fans, thanks for watching this video from DannyBTalks. If you're new to my channel, please be sure to hit subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss another video from my channel.